The Chargers made the surprising move on Wednesday, signing offensive guard / tackle Alex Leatherwood as they become the next team to try to see if they can get more from the former Raiders first round pick.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer, and we've been covering the Chargers together now for 8 seasons, but this is our 6th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you to the everydayers out there for making us your first listen, and to make sure that you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel, and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Well, Daniel, Chargers general manager Joe Hortiz said he is going to be continuously trying to churn this roster, and that means the newest addition, and that is obviously Alex Leatherwood. So we'll see what Alex Leatherwood will be able to bring to the table, if he'll be able to fight for a backup spot. This is going to be a new opportunity for him. And then OTAs, the second week, and Hayden Hurst was the star of the day, catching everything that was thrown his way, which is very exciting. And then Quentin Johnston, some positive and some negative.
Kind of the whole story about Quentin Johnston, but also kind of a little surprised that Troy Dye was actually starting at linebacker instead of Daiyan Henley. Not time to freak out yet, but today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. David, I saw a lot of back and forth and volatility surrounding the latest Chargers move, bringing in offensive tackle / guard Alex Leatherwood. So they ended up, when they put it out there, said he was a tackle, right? They, as they put the signing out, they said they're signing tackle Alex Leatherwood. But it would be surprising me if he's going to be a tackle. But just as far as the reaction to the move itself, I guess I don't have much. Like, we're talking about a former Raiders first round pick. He only lasted a year with the Raiders and started every single game before getting released. And in that year, it was pretty horrific. I mean, the Chargers will definitely be kind of using this as a buy low candidate and just another guy where it's like, hey, we're going to do anything that we can to see if there's something there. Just kick the tires on pretty much any guy that we possibly can to see if there might be some hidden value.
Well, I mean, the Chargers do have a couple of open roster spots on their 90-man roster. So, I mean, at this point, I mean, looking at this move, I wasn't overly excited about the move, to be quite honest. And, I mean, when you look at the stats in the only year that he really had any kind of significant playing time, which was his rookie year of 2021, you understand why. I mean, it's 847 snaps at right guard, 257 at right tackle, 8 sacks, 17 hits, and 65 pressures allowed. That is an astronomical number. Just to put it in perspective, Rashawn Slater played about 760 pass blocking snaps and gave up around 30 pressures. Okay, so that kind of gives you an understanding of what Alex Leatherwood was as a starter and what that is in contrast to, you know, an actual legitimate starting tackle in the NFL with Rashawn Slater.
Yeah, I think the thing that's almost as alarming is the 65 pressures allowed, 14 penalties that season as well. I mean, he was a rookie.
Sure.
I think the more problematic thing is he's, tried to catch on with a couple of teams the last few years and just hasn't worked. He appeared in 4 games with the Bears in 2022, but we're talking about a dude who hasn't seen any action since then, right?
Yeah.
Hasn't started since 2021, his rookie season. Hasn't got any playing time since 2022. So it's impossible to look at this with kind of rose-colored glasses and just say, hey, this is a guy that's going to be competing for a starting spot. He's going to, finally find that first-round pedigree that he had. And I don't expect that. I mean, I will say that coming out of college, right, he was a mauler out of Alabama. Sure. I remember, watching him. I think the red flag started popping up for me in that draft cycle, the same year they ended up taking Rashawn Slater ahead of him, was he got totally owned at the Senior Bowl, where it was like he was not able to keep up with any of those guys one-on-one in pass protection. I was like, that's, that's a little concerning to see a dude coming from the SEC and then kind of looking like that. But in college, I mean, Outland Trophy winner, basically the best lineman on either side of the ball. He won that as a senior. He was a unanimous All-American Also played on the same line and won a national championship with Bradley Bozeman, the guy who's on the show yesterday. And if you were going to bring this guy in, you would do it in a super run-heavy system, which is where he's easily at his best. His main flaws are in pass protection, and the flaws are total liabilities. And I think the hard thing is like, you can be a great pass protector in the NFL and get away with being a little bit of a lesser run blocking guy. It's hard to be a really good run blocker and get away with being a total liability in pass protection. So even though the Chargers ended up saying they signed to tackle Alex Leatherwood, to me, it has to be about one of those guard spots. I think that's where it has to fit in, because if you're talking about tackle, you have not only Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater are projected starters at this point. You have Trey Pipkins, who would slide into either one of those spots, you would believe, if either of those guys got hurt. And in another scenario, you could have Jamari Sawyer slide into either one of those guys' slots if they got hurt. So it's hard for me to believe that he would even have a dream of trying to crack this roster as a fourth tackle. But then if you're saying, hey, maybe if he's competing with Jordan McFadden or Carson Barnhart or some of those backup guards where there's even less experience there, maybe that's how they kind of see it, playing out.
That's where I see it, Daniel. I mean, I think I look at this move as competition for the guards. I mean, I think that's something we have been saying that we want. We've wanted, in the last couple of off seasons. We just don't want, the starters to rest on their laurels and feel comfortable in their guard positions, because their play last year did not warrant that comfortability. So I think at least, you're adding another guy who has some experience starting, at guard in the NFL, and, that could push the quality of the backup talent, right? Jordan McFadden as a guy hasn't played a ton of snaps, and Jamari Sawyer hasn't really caught on, even though he played well at left tackle, but the guard play, I think, has been, up and down inconsistent. So I think, this is competition for guard. I mean, hey, this is a new opportunity. Let's see what he's able to do with it.
I think my criticism there would just be, I wish there was a little bit more competition of someone that had actually done it at a little bit of a higher level, at least for Daiyan Johnson, because we know that Trey Pipkins, if he's competing for a guard spot right now, it seems like right guard, and everything coming out of OTAs on Wednesday was still Pipkins at right guard when it wasn't Jamari Sawyer at right guard, as far as the first team goes. So I wish, if you're going to bring in competition, I wish you would actually bring in legitimate competition that you think could potentially beat out Daiyan Johnson for that starting spot, or at least give him a run for his money. Whereas I don't necessarily see that with Alex Leatherwood. I mean, and honestly, if he does win his starting spot, it's probably not a good sign.
That's a huge
for your offensive line. Yeah, I mean, or, because the other part of this is it does feel like the Chargers are really trusting their coaching staff. They're trusting him with guys like Christian Fulton and Bradley Bozeman, another guy who had a really bad year last year, statistically at least. So this is, I think, another feather in the cap, but I'd also just say don't overreact to this move. This is a move, a guy who's competing at the end of the roster to try to make one of the last of the 53-man roster spots, and at the same time, there's a very good chance he doesn't make the opening day roster.
I'm with you. I wouldn't overreact to this move at all. I mean, this is not a guy that they're signing to be a starter. I mean, I think this is just pushing the depth here, and that's what we want. You want competition. That's what Jim Harbaugh said. Competitors welcomed. Well, this is an opportunity for him to see if he can try to provide that competition, if he can try to resurrect his career. I think by all accounts, he was overdrafted in the first round when he was drafted in the first round. I mean,
he has no control over that, right?
Yeah, of course. That's where he was taken. But I think that's the best case scenario here is just, hey, this is another guy we're adding to this offensive line room to try to really breed as much competition as possible and make sure that they have the best 5 starters and that they have the best quality backups as well.
Which you can kind of argue about the player they took to do that, but you can't argue with the process of, okay, we're not just worried about who's starting. We're worried about who the next guy up can be. And if Alex Leatherwood can turn a corner and be a key reserve player for this team, then that works out great for everyone, and you're getting a huge deal on a guy that everyone had already given up on. So I give credit to Joe Ortiz for literally turning over any stone. Because when you're bringing in Alex Leatherwood, you were leaving no stone unturned. You were going to try anything to try to shape this roster up and breed competition in a year that you really had very limited resources to do it. So I like it. They're showing the trust in their coaches. I think best case scenario for him, if you want to go super heavy, you could have him as like an additional tackle at the end of the line of scrimmage, just super jumbo package or something like that. That's really the only kind of path I see to him getting actually playing time. But I don't hate the move, but it's hard to love the move, bringing in someone like Alex Leatherwood, who has been such a liability so far into his pretty young career still. So we still have much to get into, including all of the notes coming out of OTAs. It was great hearing some of the things that are happening at Chargers practice right now, including Hayden Hurst going off. And I mean, David, maybe it won't be as much of a drop off from Gerald Everett to him. We're talking about that and much more on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, I need to tell you guys about Game Time, because Game Time makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier, and the prices on Game Time app actually go down the closer to tip-off it gets. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. So if you guys want to go to the playoffs, you would do that. Also, go to a hockey game. If you live near a playoff hockey game, there's not much like the Stanley Cup playoffs. So make sure you guys go check out a hockey game if you can, because there's nothing like seeing that in person. It's a great atmosphere. But if you're getting tickets to anything, NBA, NHL, theater, comedy, whatever it is, just scroll the Game Time app. You can find something to do. You use Game Time because you know you're getting the best price with the Game Time guarantee, where they'll match it 110% of the difference if you find the same tickets in the same row and section for less. And you can also toggle the prices to get that all-in pricing. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. David, let's get into what actually happened at Chargers practice on Wednesday, and I'm so glad that we had people like Eric Smith and Daniel Popper out there reporting on what was going down. And we have to start with our boy Daniel Popper. You know, no time wasted after getting married. Congratulations to Daniel Popper getting back out of practice and immediately on The Athletic giving the best insight there and the most in-depth analysis of what's going on at Chargers practice. And the one thing that when he said it, you have to take his word for it, right? Was Hayden Hurst having a big day. This is what he said. Hayden Hurst caught 7 balls in the practice. 6 of those came on throws from Herbert, including a full extension diving catch on a crossing route in the final 11-on-11 period. The 7th came from backup quarterback Easton Stick, which was Hurst's most impressive catch of the day. He ran a corner route to the left sideline and came down with an explosive reception in between 2 defenders. Hurst stood up after making the catch and launched the ball into the air in celebration. Dave, there's a lot of guys I think you'd like to see going off and having big days. But Hayden Hurst is one of the biggest wild cards on this team offensively as far as, key offensive skill position players. You have to love to see this.
The red-headed weapon. I love it. Tight end Hayden Hurst. And, I mean, honestly, before my flight, I was heading home to surprise my mom for her birthday. One of the people asked me, who would be somebody that could be like a breakout that not a lot of people are talking about. And I said Hayden Hurst, because this is a new opportunity for him, a fresh start, playing with a fantastic quarterback with Justin Herbert. And it looks like that chemistry is starting off right away in the beginning, and you absolutely love it. I mean, this is a guy that can burst onto the scene, establish that chemistry, establish that trust, and make a ton of plays. Justin Herbert loves to involve his tight ends. It's obvious, when they're in the red zone, Gerald Everett got a ton of opportunities, and Justin Herbert's looking for him. So if Hayden Hurst can get on that same page with Justin Herbert early, then I can see him having a much bigger season than a lot of people expect.
Yeah, but maybe not as big as the coaching staff expected, right? Because one of the things that stood out to me was the day I was actually at the Chargers practice, and Andy Biscoff was talking, the new tight end coach, run game coordinator, and he said this, basically, there's 6 tight ends that everyone in the league wants. Then he said, there's no reason that Hayden can't be that next guy. There's no reason. He has all the speed, all the hands, all the ability. Hayden just needs to find the right situation. And he said this was that. He said they knew it when they drafted him in Baltimore, and they know that now he can be that guy, which is huge because the Chargers are putting a lot on Hayden Hurst as far as him being the main receiving option that they have in this offense under Greg Roman. And as far as like the tight end and the connections go, like for me, it almost doesn't feel like Justin Herbert's ever had that great of a connection, like just a tight end that he's fully trusted and would go to in big moments all the time. Like you never really saw Hunter Henry or Gerald Everett put up huge touchdown numbers or things like that. It just never seemed like he was totally on the same page with those guys. If Hayden Hurst can be that guy, if he can develop that trust with Justin Herbert, that's huge because I think you're going into the season feeling like it's a drop-off from Gerald Everett to Hayden Hurst because of what Gerald Everett's been able to do the last couple of years, putting up pretty good seasons with the Chargers offense. But Hayden Hurst has a better season in 2020 than Gerald Everett's ever had, right? 56 catches, 571 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Gerald Everett has had more catches than that one time, but he's never had more yards than that. He's never had more touchdowns than that. So maybe it's not as big of a drop off and you add Will Dissly to that room, and maybe you're actually working with a much better tight end room than you were in the 2023 season. So I think that's huge, seeing that he's doing well. You have to wait to get the pads on. He's also a guy that's missed at least 4 games in three of the last 3 seasons. That's going to be the biggest thing for him as far as how big of a piece of this offense he can be.
Yeah, for sure. Got to stay on the field.
Now let's talk about Quentin Johnston. And basically what Daniel Popper said about Quentin Johnston was 2 steps forward, 1 step back, which has kind of been the career of Quentin Johnston so far. That's what he said. Early in the day, he fought through a holding penalty to make a solid catch and an out route along the sideline. It was a seed from Herbert, and Johnston handled it. He used his size and strength to create separation out of his break despite the contact. Later in 11-on-11, he won a similar route to successfully convert a 3rd and 5. In that same period, Johnston ran a comeback route on the outside right alignment on another 3rd down. Herbert's throw came in slightly high with the velocity. It hit off Johnston's hands and squirted out of bounds. And I think that's just the hard thing for Quentin Johnston going into this offseason, David, is just like every drop that you have is going to be put under a microscope. And until you prove it's not an issue, it's going to be an issue.
That's for sure. I think the one thing I will touch on as far as the positive is concerned is him fighting through the contact. I think last year, as a rookie, he got really abused a little bit too much at the line of scrimmage for the size of receiver that he is. 6'3", 215, 218. This is a guy that should not be able to be accosted the way he was last year. So seeing that he was able to fight through that contact and be able to create separation and come down with that pass, that's a positive development for me. So I hope that continues. Obviously, the hands part of it is always going to be something until it's not. Quentin Johnston has to answer those questions with repeated quality catches with limiting the drops. And until he does that, that question is going to remain over his head until he answers it.
And it just feels like the connection between him and Justin Herbert. I think that's what you want him to be able to do, is just to earn that trust that it never felt like he really earned from Herbert last year, where Herbert was looking for Alex Erickson instead of him. So I think that's the one thing, is just like the whole, like, that is good. Him actually playing up to his size, him playing up to his strength, and like bodying defensive backs who are all going to be smaller than him, to use that to create separation is exactly what he should be doing. The problem is it just gets so much harder to focus on the pros and like the things he does right when there's always like, but he also had a big drop, right? And to what Daniel Popper's saying is, hey, probably not an easy catch, but one that an NFL receiver should come down with. So I like to see it. I can't wait to see him out of training camp, but at the same time, for him, even if he goes off in training camp, it's just going to be really hard to buy in until we see it in real game action. But Darius Davis was looking good, though, playing in the slot in place of Ladd McConkey, which we'll have to maybe talk about that a little bit more tomorrow, too. Ladd McConkey missing OTAs. We don't know any of what the severity is. No, he was working in some drills, but not every drill, so nothing serious. But Darius Davis playing in the slot, catching bombs. I know, David, that was something you were excited about at training camp, but it also brings me to the special teams focus, which was the main thing happening differently at Chargers OTAs. They were putting a huge emphasis on the punt returns, punts, and also the new kickoff return with the new rules where basically everyone's standing still and nobody starts moving until the ball hits the ground or the receiver gets it. And all of the defenders or the blockers and all of the guys trying to make the tackle are lined up about 10 yards away from each other, which changes everything. But I think when you're a Chargers fan, you get excited because Ryan Ficken. Daniel Popper did say Darius Davis was the guy back there, which he wasn't great last year. With any one of 5 kick returns last year, he was 28th in return average. So, like, he was much better punt returner than kick returner. Now it changes a little bit with the way it's going down now. And I think when you have Ryan Ficken, you're just like, okay, well, this is another place where Ryan Ficken can find an advantage. Give him as much practice time as you need.
100%. I love Ryan Ficken. Ryan Ficken has earned that trust because of how quickly he was able to overturn the Chargers special teams unit, going from one of the worst in the league to going to one of the best in the league. And I think one of the things that was interesting for me is the type of players that he was using on the special teams unit. Smaller bodied guys, according to Daniel Popper, 4 defensive backs, a wide receiver, 3 linebackers, and an edge player on that return team. So it's interesting to see. I mean, obviously, my full trust is in Ryan Ficken. I know he's going to have some things up his sleeve, and I'm curious to see what Darius Davis is going to be able to do, because we know he's deadly quick, and he has that real breakaway speed to make some major plays.
And I think we saw offensively that he had pretty good vision as well. I think laterally, He's up and down. Like, I mean, it wasn't great for him as far as kickoff returns last year. I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. He wasn't able to really break anything, where he should have had 2 punt return touchdowns last year in the regular season, which is crazy. One of the best in the league.
Penalty.
An all-pro already at that position. Yeah. And I think they'll try some other guys out. If I was to put money on it, I would say it's Darius Davis. But the one guy he didn't mention as far as all the smaller players was that Scott Matlock is out there.
Yeah.
Scott Matlock, the defensive tackle, the dude who made waves last year, and we loved him because he said he was out here to soul snatch and take somebody's job from, take a job from a grown man.
I love it.
Was the one out there on the kickoff return. And like, I just like to think that Ryan Ficken looks at Scott Matlock's crazy eyes and tells Darius Davis, like, go find this dude and just run behind him, and he will clear the gateway to hell for you. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, he's just going, like, I wouldn't want, like, nobody's going to want to, like, run into the block that Scott Matlock is trying to unleash on special teams. So I really loved that. A bunch of little guys and then crazy Scott Matlock out there. But we do have more to get into, including Troy Dye, who we thought was a special teamer, actually starting at linebacker over Daiyan Henley. Is it time to panic? We'll get into that and much more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. All right, David, well, let's get into Troy Dye, because one of the other things that came out from Daniel Popper was that with Junior Colson obviously out, and we'll talk a little bit about him, it was Denzel Perriman and Troy Dye in with the starting defense on 11-on-11s at Chargers OTAs on Wednesday, which we talked last week. Navarro Bowman spoke with the media and basically said that Daiyan Henley had the starting job to lose. And I will make another point that no starting job is lost when you're in shirts and shorts, which is what Navarro Bowman said as well. But I do want to make sure everyone is checking out the Locked On Sports Today first ever 24/7 national sports streaming channel, where you can get coverage of every sport all day, every day, by the local experts giving you the expertise that you only have when you cover your team every single day. So make sure you guys go subscribe to Locked On Sports Today, doing it differently, the first ever 24/7 national sports streaming channel. But David, Troy Dye, a linebacker from Minnesota, mainly a special teamer, played with Ryan Ficken in Minnesota, so the kind of link made sense there of why the Chargers were bringing him in. Yet we're out here in the second week of OTAs, and he's starting next to Denzel Perriman in the first-team defense.
Well, I think one of the things that Troy Dye said and what factored into his decision to come to the Chargers was that he was going to be given an opportunity to play on defense, and it was very important to him. And this is a guy that does have some experience actually starting on defense. He's logged 408 defensive snaps in his career, played in the middle of the defense for 25 games. Most of those snaps came in his rookie year and down the stretch last year in 2023. So he does have some starting ability and does have some experience playing middle linebacker and a starting defense. So it's interesting to me to see that he's out there over Daiyan Henley. I don't know if it's ready, if we're in a situation to where we should panic about that quite yet. I mean, we're talking about OTAs here. They're going to be rotating players in, trying to see what fits, what looks right, see how they're handling, this new defense that they're learning. But it is an interesting development.
Yeah, and if he's playing really well, that's a good thing for a linebacker room that doesn't have a lot of questions answered at this point, because Daiyan Henley, even at this point, is a huge question mark, and you have to see. I think you just hope that Daiyan Henley is putting in all the work and is getting up to speed with the defensive playbook and all the things he needs to do to give himself a realistic shot, because I think the one thing that we're seeing with this move, with them signing Alex Leatherwood, with them making some of the other moves that they have, is the best guys are going to play no matter what your name is, and that's what they promised us, and I think we're seeing a little bit of that, where it's like Daiyan Henley might have been the guy, but Troy Dye was really good last week. I mean, there was the mic'd up video of Jesse Minter talking and just saying, like, man, like, Troy Dye really does have those long arms. He's breaking stuff up in coverage. So, like, he played well. They're giving him a shot with the first team to see what he can do there. I mean, maybe he's someone they feel like could be a dime linebacker and can help them in coverage if they need to, and they have smaller sets out on the field. Like, I think we all hope that Daiyan Henley could be that, because Daiyan Henley is a super good athlete as well. Yeah. And I think that one of the things that's going to hurt Troy Dye, I mean, it's not coverage that's really been his problem. It's more having to stop the run and being a smaller dude trying to stop the run like that. So if Daiyan Henley wants to make his impression, that's where it's going to be. Don't get anything confused. And I think the best case scenario for this team right now, unless Troy Dye just plays out of his mind, is that it's Junior Colson and Daiyan Henley out there eventually. And I still think it's going to get to that, because we're talking about Troy Dye taking Daiyan Henley's spot. When Junior Colson comes back, he would be taking Denzel Perriman's spot, because Denzel Perriman's the Mike and Troy Dye, Daiyan Henley are the Will. But there was some good news coming out of OTAs about Junior Colson, because last week we were kind of left in the dark. The media got to go to one practice. Junior Colson left the field with trainers, and that was it. And we were left to, use our imagination for the rest. And we had said, hey, don't worry about it. We'll know more. It's probably not that serious. And it doesn't look like it is, because he was out working on the side with trainers and also got in for the fourth corner finishing period, which is still my favorite name of any period the Chargers have right now, which is a good sign, David. It means he's not going to miss too much time. And I think with someone like Junior Colson, they probably have to save him from himself, because he's trying to get out there. It's a dude who played with 2 clubs on his hands last year, so I'm sure they're probably being extra cautious.
No question about it. And also, I think if it was something serious, significant, they would have to tell us about that type of injury. So
when he wouldn't be out there conditioning either, right?
Sure,
he wouldn't be doing things like that.
So yeah, he was out there, including the sled pulls, according to Daniel Popper. So that is good news. I mean, hey, this is the time to be overly cautious. You don't want them to be going out there doing too much too soon. We need this guy to be available for training camp so he can get in and be ready and help everyone else around him in that defense and ultimately be ready for the season.
Exactly. And I think the thing that you like most about him is, that if there was anyone that could kind of recover from being injured early on, at least mentally, it would be Junior Colson, who played in Jesse Minter's defense last year. But Troy Dye actually got to talk with the media after practice as well, after getting some starting reps, which is awesome, because he got to be asked about Justin Herbert, the collegiate version, when he was at Oregon with the Ducks, because he's one of the few people that has experience with not only now Justin Herbert, the professional level, but also spent time with him in college as well. And I thought when he was asked about the changes since Herbert in college, he said this. He's bigger was basically the main thing he said. He's a lot bigger than I used to be, but he said a big time leader, not super vocal where he's going to be rah-rah, but when he needs to say something, he says it. And I think his words carry a lot of weight. I think around this building, they carry more weight than they did at Oregon. And that is almost verbatim what we heard from Bradley Bozeman yesterday, where it's like, hey, I haven't seen a lot, but I do know this. When he steps in the huddle, everyone shuts up and listens to everything and hangs on every word he says, because he has that respect. So it was interesting kind of hearing Troy Dye say, hey, I have seen the growth in the leadership, which was the number one knock on Herbert's game coming out. Could he be that guy to lead a team? And he can. And I think it's nice to hear him kind of put that in perspective.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think Justin Herbert earned almost everyone's respect when he knocked out that linebacker in his first game against the Chiefs. I mean, I think that's where it began. It's like, okay, this dude's not just a tall drink of water that looks like a surfer, model, whatever. This guy's a legit football player, right? This is a guy that is ready to do the dirty work and is not afraid to go out there and knock some skulls if he has to do so. And after that, and then, just playing through injuries, I think he's earned that respect, and it's really nice to see multiple players echo those same sentiments.
It is, especially someone who got to see it, because that was the thing at Oregon. And when there wasn't much to pick on, that's what people picked on, because there weren't many things that people could really say about Justin Herbert, but saying he's kind of timid. I don't know if he can be the leader guy was the hot thing to say. This was the funniest part to me. Was he was saying that he actually saw his competitiveness off the football field when they were playing a 3-on-3 basketball tournament, which I'm so sad we're not going to see any more Justin Herbert dunking highlights, because he can do it. But he was asked if he was a trash talker, and he said, yeah, he definitely is a big-time trash talker. I don't think a lot of people know that. He is good with his words for sure. So I love to hear that. And I also think, going to your point about knocking out that linebacker, because, if we get a Phillip Rivers, light trash talking version of Justin Herbert, I might just, die on the spot like that. That would be something I would love to see, him just trash talking and letting that side of himself out a little bit while he's on the field,
awesome.
But as far as the leadership part and just earning it, this is what Troy Dye said. He said, through his track record over time, you have to earn that respect from guys, especially in the league. I think he has done that. When you come in as a rookie, you don't have as much respect, and you have to earn your stripes. He's definitely earned his stripes through battle and gameplay. A lot of guys in this locker room really respect everything he says and will go to war for him, and I'm one of those guys. Love to hear it. Love to see it. We saw it last year with a man named Jerry, whatever his full name is, Tillery. I wish I knew it so I could call him by his full God-given name. Hit him late on the sideline, and that sideline I've never seen react in that way, where every single one of those dudes is out there with a pitchfork ready to war. Just absolutely kill Jerry Tillery if they had the chance. So I think that matches up with what we've seen. And even though you might not be able to totally quantify how much leadership Justin Herbert has gained in this league, that the men in that locker room respect him. And that is And the even keel part of his game too, right?
Yeah.
Like there is something to that. I mean, Johnny Manziel was a rah guy. Where's he? You know what I mean? There's something to always being the same dude. And that is a lot of times just as important to always be the same guy, whether you're up 20 or down 20, than to be the guy who's always rah out there. So
Yeah.
love to hear that. Love that you guys checked out today's show. We appreciate everyone that checked out and left good comments for Bradley Bozeman's show. We'll definitely have to be getting more guests like that on, and you know we will be trying to do it. Thank you to the Everydayers for checking us out today. And make sure you never miss a show. Go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. Come back tomorrow because it is Fan Mail Friday. And we also got to hear from new defensive line coach Mike Elston, who had some really high praise for Jesse Minter, calling him one of the best game day play callers that he's ever worked with. So make sure you guys are back here for that by also following us on all social media because we post the show there as well. On Twitter at LockedOnLAC. You can find me there at Dan Talk Sports and David at Dro Talk SD, where we post the show every day. On Instagram at Locked On Chargers and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. But make sure you guys are back here tomorrow. Get your questions in at Locked On LAC. Call into the voicemail line at 323-524-7924. Leave us a 30-second Chargers question there. And come back for the comments about Jesse Minter's creativity and greatness. But until then, guys, take it easy and go Bolts.